South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles,
Touchdown!
Sixers,
It's good!
and Flyers.
Oh, big save by Carter Hart.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on a Friday edition, the final Friday before the NFL draft. 2021 NFL draft is just days away. We are getting you ready all over the place right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we are live here in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. All right, here's the deal. So let's set the table. We're going to talk some Eagles, talk some NFL draft for part of the hour today. Also some Flyers talk with the Flyers back in action tonight. They're playing a lot of young guys. They won the game last night. They got Alex Lyon. Looks like he's going to start in goal tonight. So we're going to get into all the details with the Flyers coming up with Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. He'll get into what is with the Flyers, who are all these young guys playing. Why should you care about these young guys who are playing? So a lot to get to with Kevin Durso tonight. Jackson Cates is going to make his NHL debut tonight. So another young player for the Flyers making his debut. So basically what you're finding out is with the Flyers basically technically, not mathematically, but realistically out of playoff contention, you're seeing a youth movement going on with the Philadelphia Flyers. So we'll get to that all about the Flyers coming up with Durso at 6:20. Also, don't forget, Sports Bash Saturdays. Tomorrow we'll give you a full preview of UFC 261, but I'll give you some of my weekend picks for the UFC coming up in about 40 minutes from now. But right now, we got to get to the Eagles, the NFL draft. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can comment on the show right here on 97.3 ESPN+. You can text in if you're listening on the radio on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app at 609-403-0973 is the text board. You know, as we are now days away from the draft, the smoke screens and the fog and the misdirection is getting more and more intense. And I'm going to keep falling back on one specific thing when it comes to the NFL draft. And the thing I'm going to keep falling back on is I can't guarantee you what the Eagles will pick, but I feel very comfortable telling you who the Eagles are not going to get. You didn't trade out of the 6th overall pick just for any old reason. You traded out of the 6th overall pick because I think Howie Roseman and Andy Weidel, who is the head of player personnel and scouting and all that stuff, basically the current Joe Douglas. I know there's a contingent of Eagle fans are obsessed with Joe Douglas. Well, he's the new Joe Douglas. All right. So the new Joe Douglas is here. And I think those guys realize that what is going on with the Philadelphia Flyers, sorry, the Eagles, I should say, is not going to be as simple as a one draft turnaround. This is not going to take one draft to get this out of the way. This is going to be a multiple year rebuild. This is going to be a multi-year setup. And I love what Sal Paolantonio said earlier today on the Sports Bash, because this really spoke to me. Okay? This really cut to the chase of what this team is thinking. Sal Paolantonio on the Sports Bash saying something that I think should resonate with more people.
They don't want to take shortcuts, meaning build from the inside out, stayed to the core values that they had when they drafted Fletcher Cox, they drafted Thane Johnson, they drafted Brandon Graham, they drafted Jason Kelsey, who are the cornerstones of the trenches of the football team.
They're not going to take shortcuts. Listen, this is not a quick fix. And partly, it's not a quick fix because of their own fault. The Eagles put themselves in this position where they mortgaged the chances to rebuild, to restructure, to set things up for the years to come because they were so insistent on extending what they thought was their championship window, forgetting that they had the championship window because of creating a quick turnaround, because they signed so many one-year contracts. Chris Long, like Garrett Blunt. They went out and got guys like Patrick Robinson to fill voids on the team, but they were mostly on one-year deals. Alshon Jeffery was on a prove-it deal as well. So you signed all these guys with the intention of trying to bridge a gap. And you're seeing them do the same thing again this offseason. Eric Wilson, Anthony Harris, one-year contracts. Joe Flacco, one-year contract. The free agency is about filling the voids at this second. But as Adam Kaplan explained yesterday on the Sports Bash on Football at 4, the NFL draft is not about the right now. It's about the future, something the Eagles frankly ignored for part of the last few years.
The draft is not about this season. It's not like, okay, we're going to draft just for this year's roster and then cut the whole team. No, folks, it's the future. Free agency, as general managers have told me over the years, it's about right now and maybe a year after. The draft is down the line, and hopefully you get some help out of it this year, but it's really about down the line.
It's about the future. It's about down the line. So think about that. The Eagles are not going to take shortcuts. They're building for the future. And I think that's the one thing I can promise you with the draft. I understand that there is a growing sentiment right now and a growing feeling that the Eagles could go offensive line. If they do, I certainly will be disappointed. I won't hate it, but I'll be disappointed because I think that this team needs to address the cornerback position above anything else. I can't accept the reality where anybody thinks there is a more important player or position for this team than cornerback. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can comment on the show here on 97.3 ESPN. And for the Eagles, they are sitting at 12. And whether they trade up, they trade back, I will be disappointed if they don't go defense. Because I am concerned that in this division, somebody's got to guard those wide receivers. But I understand that the way this team thinks, the way this team analyzes the game, they look at things such as the offensive and defensive line as the building points of this team, and then they add talent around those building points. I get it. I understand it. I don't agree with it 100% because I think there are sometimes you have to go out and address other positions. And I hear people say all the time, you got to take best player available. You don't draft for need. And I've heard Jeff Mosher mention that numerous times. And, Sal Paolantonio mentioned it as well today on the Sports Bash. And I got to tell you, I don't fully agree with that concept. And here's why. If the best player available is at a position that you are already strong at, it doesn't make sense to me to draft the guy at that position when you have a need at another position with a player who is similarly ranked. I think that we take the concept of best player available sometimes way too literally, okay? And I think that, and no offense to the people who cover the league. Listen, Sal Paolantonio has been doing this longer than some of you listening have been alive. And Jeff Mosher is, and him and Adam Kaplan are two of the most connected Eagles insiders on the planet. And we are so fortunate to have these guys come on. But I don't agree with the concept that it always has to be best player available. Because if you have two players, and I'll just use this as a specific example. Let's say you have a offensive lineman, Rashawn Slater. Let's say he's graded 84 on your chart. And J.C. Horn is graded 81 on your chart, or 82, or whatever number you want to throw out there. Rashawn Slater is theoretically the best player available. But if J.C. Horn is sitting there, are you really going to pass him up when you need help at cornerback? I think that's foolish. So for me, when I look at the Eagles, I hope that they don't get ridiculous. And yes, I will be disappointed if they go offensive line, because realistically, you have a history of finding offensive linemen not in the first round. Vaitai was your starting left tackle in the Super Bowl. Isaac Seumalo is your starting guard. Jason Kelce, your starting center. You didn't draft those guys in the first round. Jordan Mailata is a late draft pick that you've developed, and he looks like he is your left tackle of the future. The thing this team has not had in a very long time is a set of cornerbacks who can go mano-a-mano with the best in the league. And when you're in a division with all the wide receivers the Eagles have, I'm just concerned. Get to some of your comments here as we are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as at 609-403-0973 for all of you who are listening on the radio and on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Harris chimes in and says, Josh, what do you think about Davis Mills, Kellen Mond, or Kyle Trask as being a late pick option? So those three guys are three completely different scenarios. And I think that you couldn't have done a better job, Harris. I mean that sincerely, at picking three very different quarterbacks. Here's my perspective on these guys. Davis Mills is the biggest project of the three, but arguably the best upside. Davis Mills, according to Trent Dilfer, who runs the Elite 11 camps, has the potential, in Dilfer's opinion, to be one of the best quarterback prospects from this class, but because of his history with injuries, has set him back in his overall development. So I don't know if the Eagles are the best team for him to go to. I could totally see Davis Mills ending up with an organization like the Saints and becoming like a Pro Bowl level quarterback, or a team like the Raiders who loves to collect quarterbacks. I think that Mills is not a guy who's going to be, you're not going to ask him to do certain things at this point because of where he is in his development, but he's got the intangibles. He's got the arm talent to be an NFL quarterback. I don't know if the Eagles are the best situation for him. I think Kellen Mond and Kyle Trask make more sense for the Eagles because of who their quarterback coach is. Brian Johnson from Florida. Obviously, he coached Kyle Trask for a couple of years. He knows him intimately. He knows what makes Kyle Trask successful. He knows how to bring out the best in him. So if you want to draft Kyle Trask to be potentially your long-term backup quarterback after this year, if you can get him in the middle rounds, that'd be great. I don't know if he'll be available in the middle rounds because I think some people will draft him a little too high because of his gaudy stats last year. Kellen Mond is also going to be a bit of a project because I think Kellen Mond got some bad coaching in college. No offense to Jimbo Fisher down at Texas A&M, but he is not a quarterback guru, and his staff is not, aside from Jameis Winston, they're not exactly known for developing quarterbacks during his years as a coach. Jimbo Fisher's strengths has always been recruiting and developing the skill positions, the running backs, the wide receivers. So Kellen Mond didn't get the best coaching. He has an incredible amount of talent, but he needs time to develop. And Kellen Mond, the rawness of his ability does align, not 100%, but a little bit with another former Brian Johnson protege, that being Dak Prescott, when Johnson was over at Mississippi State with Dak Prescott. I don't know if Mond is going to be I don't think Mond can be as good as Dak. I think Dak showed you a level of intangibles and leadership and arm strength that Mond hasn't. I think Mond has arm talent, and I think Mond has a work ethic that would allow him to be better. So if I'm the Eagles and I had to pick a developmental quarterback for the middle rounds, I would lean the Trask because of Brian Johnson's familiarity with him, or Kellen Mond because his skill set is something that I think the Eagles coaches like Johnson, also Nick Sirianni, who's worked with guys like Jacoby Brissett, Andrew Luck, and so on. I think those coaches, also Steichen, who worked with different quarterbacks like Justin Herbert last year, I think Mond kind of fills into that prototype of guys they've had success with. Let's get one more comment on the YouTube channel. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Beth chimes in and says, Josh, do you think Farley's an option at all if they trade back in the first round? Imagine getting him with the 12th pick. They get Horn, double down on cornerback, then a wide receiver in the third. A couple of things. One, I would love if the Eagles got Horn at the 12th pick. I think that would be incredible. I would love that pick. Either him or Surtain. I would love it. Farley, I'm conflicted. I'm genuinely conflicted because I think Farley has incredible amount of talent. A lot of talent batters love him. I'm wary of the multiple back procedures, the knee injury, the lack of playing time in the last year and change. I don't know where he is in his development. I don't like the fact this guy needed to have another back procedure instead of working out for people before the draft. It concerns me. Wide receiver in the third round, I could definitely see that. Maybe a Armand St. Brown from USC, someone like that can make sense for them in the third round. So I like your way of thinking. I'm just not sold on the idea of Farley. Now, if you told me it was J.C. Horn in the first, Asante Samuel Jr. in the second, and then a wide receiver in the third, I think I'd be much more excited about that. But it's a very good question by Beth there on the YouTube channel. We're going to get to the Flyers coming up next. Another Flyers prospect making his debut tonight. We'll get into that with Kevin Durso next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, where you can customize your alerts. You want Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies news updates. You can customize it all. Just download the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
It's the 2021 NFL Draft exclusively on 97.3 ESPN. Who will the Eagles take with the 12th pick? Tune in to 97.3 ESPN to find out. Thursday night, round one coverage begins at 7 p.m. Tune in for every selection and every draft day trade. It's the 2021 NFL Draft, and it's only on South Jersey's exclusive radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. 97.3 ESPN.
On some models, excludes Corvette with GM financing. Excludes prior sale. See dealer for details.
It's Bennett Chevrolet's Spring into Savings Super Sale. This month, you'll get Bennett's famous GM supplier employee pricing on new Chevys, and you keep all the rebates, up to a 25% discount on some models. There's no need to negotiate. Just get here and get your new Chevy at the GM supplier employee price, and you keep all the rebates, up to a 25% discount. There's another way to save big with Bennett's available 0% financing. Plus, Bennett's paying a minimum $7,000 for any trade you can bring us, regardless of condition. That's a minimum $7,000 for any vehicle towards any pre-owned on our lot. Imagine how much more we'll pay for your good quality trade. And because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's never any sales pressure and never any negotiating needed. No stress, no hassles, no haggles. Just your best car buying experience ever. Find new roads at Bennett Chevrolet, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Swing in to Matt Blatt Kia and put zero down. A hit with 0% APR financing. That's deep for 75 months. A home run. Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township needs your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $13.33 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity refinance into new loan. Go to mattblattkia.nj.com for complete details. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 in Toms River.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. UFC 261 on Saturday night. Bet on Rose Namajunas to win back her strawweight championship belt at plus 172 odds. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. With the more your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the hour at 609-403-0973. And, of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers back in action tonight to get into all the details of another Flyer making his debut tonight. How about them apples? I mean, this is the real reason why you watch the Flyers right now. It's not because they're going to win or lose games, but because you're seeing the future of the organization in real time. Talk more about that is Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, at Kevin_Durso on Twitter for all your Flyers and NHL coverage. And of course, the co-host of the, and I just forgot the name of your podcast, the Open Ice Hits podcast. There we go. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So let's get to these young players, because to me, that's the biggest story of what's going on the Flyers right now. Because honestly, I told you on text, I was entertained by the game last night. The Flyers actually gave you an entertaining product on a night where the Sixers looked like garbage. There was no Phillies on television. So if you were flipping the channels and you wanted something else to watch, your choices were either, if you weren't watching the Sixers game, the Flyers or the volleyball college national championship. And I think I made the better choice of picking the Flyers, and I'm enjoying seeing these young guys come up. And Kevin, it looks like we got another young guy making his debut tonight.
Yeah, we do. It's Jackson Cates. He's fresh out of college at this point. He just played his last college game about 2 weeks ago, signed 5 days after that, and took his time going through the quarantine process and everything he had to do to get off of the COVID list as part of his travel and things like that to get with the team. And he's basically had one practice, and they're giving him a shot, which it certainly tells you a lot about what they think of the kid so far and where he could go from here. I mean, he's a good, hard-nosed two-way player. I mean, that's what he's going to bring. He's probably fits the mold of that bottom six type guy. He's been compared to Scott Lawton a little bit. So you're going to get one of those types of guys, but these are the guys that come into the situation and want to work as hard as they can and show what they have. And I think you're seeing that already to an extent. And I'm not going to try to compare the two players, but Wade Allison's been that way. Wade Allison has come in and looks like he's embracing the opportunity, and that's why he's been in the lineup this whole time since he made his debut. And it's why it hasn't taken, over the course of the last week, they played in Pittsburgh when Allison made his debut. He scores in the game against Washington a week ago on last Saturday, and he's played in every game since as well. So Wade Allison's carving out a spot for himself with the way he's playing, and he's been one of the most exciting players to watch. I know I'm enjoying watching the way he plays, and it seems like every time he's around the puck, something good's happening. And you're wondering what you can get with Jackson Cates now. It's a little bit unfortunate that Tanner Laczynski is the other guy who hasn't been able to play in the lineup lately. He's been injured for a little, but these are the types of guys you're going to see. And obviously, I think the headliner of this group of college prospects realistically is Cam York, who just made his pro debut on Wednesday with the Phantoms. And it'll probably be just a matter of time. He gets a few more games under his belt at the AHL level, and it'll be a matter of time before he's up here as well. But this is another example. This is, I believe it's the fourth Flyer to make his NHL debut this season. And you're starting to see what these guys have. And there's nothing wrong with giving any of these guys the opportunity to play either significant minutes or to see if they fill a role the right way. And that's why I kind of pointed out, I know Nolan Patrick's the guy who comes out of the lineup so Cates can go in. I don't think this is injury related. I really think that this is just the decision they're making to play Jackson Cates over Nolan Patrick for this game, at least, to see how he fits in and to see what he has, because I think everybody, from Alain Vigneault all the way down to management and things like that, I think everybody's just curious. What do they have? And this is what these last few games are going to be about. I believe now it's 10 left to go, and this is what this is about. You got to see what you got from some of these kids and see who you're moving forward with, who you may be moving on from, and who's going to be part of this core group going forward.
Now, in terms of, how does Jackson Cates and Wade Allison, how do all these guys kind of, rate compare to each other in terms of who, most people know who Cam York is. If you follow hockey, you know who Cam York is because of Team USA. But some of these other guys you might not be familiar with. Obviously, I thought Wade has looked really good. Some of his games, obviously not putting a bunch of points on the board, but his play looks active, energetic, and he's got that look to him, right, of an NHL player. So what is really the delineation in terms of these prospects? Because most people would say, well, I'm familiar with baseball, where people say, okay, here are the Phillies ranking of their top prospects. So of the young guys who have come up, how would you kind of rank those guys?
Yeah, it's tough to say completely because, everybody can kind of grow into a role, and become better than what we think they're going to be, or possibly not amount to the potential that it looks like they have. So you're right with Cam York. Cam York's the guy who everybody knows, and a lot of reason that they know him is not just because of the U.S. team, but he's a first-round pick. So when you're a first-round pick, you get a lot of the attention. Wade Allison's a second. Tanner Laczynski was a sixth. Jackson Cates, who's going to make his debut tonight, undrafted free agent. These are guys who nobody really knows about. They're kind of the diamonds in the rough that you kind of have to work with and see if they stick in the line. That's why I think everybody's so curious about them. I think Cates is probably going to be that type of guy who plays in the bottom six, fits that role. Laczynski's kind of the same type of player. Allison's got the one distinction that may make him a bit of a more potential player in this league and somebody who stands out a little bit more, and I would say that is his shot. And we haven't really seen it yet because he's been played in a role, on a power play. He's playing net front. He's not really getting into the position where he can unleash that shot, but in the minors, he certainly was, and he was showing it off pretty well, and that's why I think he's made the transition so quickly to play probably only about a week or two's worth of minor league games, and he got the call. And that's how quickly he can turn heads, and especially with the way the team is, if you make a good impression right away, like Wade Allison's doing so far, same thing with a guy like Joel Farabee from a year ago now. Joel Farabee, again, same thing, a former first-round pick. But it didn't take long for people to realize he belongs in the league, and there was no reason to send him back to the minors. So that's why he's carved out his spot as well. You have to let them kind of show it off and see what kind of good impression they can make from the start. And if they need more work, they go back. And that's, it's why a guy like Scott Lawton has taken so long to kind of find his role and to be a staple of the lineup going forward. It doesn't happen overnight sometimes with guys who fit a certain role in the bottom six. There's guys who fall into line right at the top. I think Allison could be a good top six player if we get to see that shot at some point and see how it translates to the NHL game now that we've seen him in the minors and seen him play a handful of games at the NHL level. That's what we're going to do with everybody else. It's what we're going to do with Cates tonight. It's what we're going to continue to do when Laczynski's back in the lineup, and what we'll do in the future when a guy like Cam York or anybody from the minors makes their way to the NHL.
Kevin Durso joining us here on Game Night. Flyers versus Rangers. Run it back tonight here on 97.3 ESPN, top of the hour. Tim Saunders, Steve Coates on the call here on your home for Flyers hockey, 97.3 ESPN in South Jersey. Kevin, talking about the future as well, The guy in goal is not the goalie of the future, but he is still a young goaltender that people are curious about. And I mentioned Alex Lyon because, I was watching, me, I'm one of the people who does watch the other rest of the NHL. And a former Flyer, Anthony Stolarz, having a solid year out there with the Ducks, right? And Lyon, maybe there was a time people thought that the Stolarz could be maybe the future backup. Is maybe Alex Lyon auditioning for that future backup role?
I don't know if he's auditioning for the backup role because I still think that if you're going to continue to move forward, whenever Carter Hart's healthy enough to play again, I think that he's going to be the guy you're trying to carve out for that number one, and you're going to want a veteran backup with him, not a guy like Alex Lyon, who's not quite a veteran yet, even though he's been around for what feels like a few years now. He doesn't have the game experience. I'm actually, I was listening earlier and PT was on talking about him a little bit. His last win actually was not as far back as PT wants to say. It was actually February. It was February 1st from 2019, I guess it was, or 2020. I'm sorry. It was right before the pause, actually. A rare point when the Flyers needed to go to a third goalie last season. And actually, the only reason I remember it is because there was a funny story I got for you. When he started the last game, kind of surprisingly started the last game against Washington last Saturday, he was available to us for the media after the game and got to a certain point while answering questions where he went, "That's it? There's no more?" This guy talked after that win in February a year ago for 8-9 minutes, basically, which is probably twice as long, if not 3 times as long as most players will stay and talk with the media after a game. So he just continued to talk and doesn't have a problem sharing his story. He's got a great personality and all that type of stuff. So he's a great guy, and I don't, that's obviously, we can say that about a lot of people who play in the league. But from that standpoint, I don't think he's auditioning for anything. I think realistically, I've seen people when I mentioned that Lyon was going to be on this trip and Lyon might get the start tonight when we didn't really know the answer until after the game last night. There was a lot of people, I've seen people say, just shut Carter Hart down for the year and let him get back, into his head and get back into the right game shape and all that stuff and focus on next year. I don't see the team doing that at all. I think when he's ready to go, they want to get him in goal for some games. You got 5 games left out of 9 to go after tonight that'll be against the New Jersey Devils. It's a great team to get Carter Hart in against and see if he can build some confidence with not just positive play, but positive results as well, winning some games. They definitely can compete with the New Jersey Devils. I know that he'll face tough competition in Pittsburgh and Washington. They still have 2 games against each of those after tonight, but those games against the Devils, you can possibly build some confidence with them, especially the last one of the year. If you can get to the last game of the season against the Devils, go out on a high note and win a game, I think that would be a great thing for Carter Hart, so I don't see them shutting him down, so I don't see this as an audition for Alex Lyon either in that case.
All right, so that being said, you mentioned you think the plan is to keep having this veteran goalie backup. Will Brian Elliott be that veteran goaltender after this year? Because I think that, there's always a team out there that's like, hey, Brian had a good year and our goaltender situation is really rough. Hey, Brian, maybe we'll overpay you to come be our starter for one more year and try to maybe drag out maybe a little bit more of his career. I'm just curious because I thought Elliott has played well overall this year. Aside from the one goal, I thought he looked good last night. The one goal I don't think was really his fault. So, what is Elliott's future here?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first of all, you're absolutely right. Brian Elliott's the reason they won that game. I know that we can go to James Hennig like taking a puck off the face and all that stuff. Brian Elliott was the reason they won that game.
Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. Brian Elliott was the reason they won that game, though, because realistically, that first period could have been a 3-0 deficit for the team, and that would have just been game over at that point. It was only 1-0. They stayed in the game. Elliott made an outstanding save, one of the best I've seen this year from a Flyers goaltender on Panarin in the second period. And that's probably the momentum changer right there because I think the Flyers started to play better from there. They got the lead. They held on to the lead at the end. He's been reliable, and no question about it. When he's able to, the key for him is not overworking him. If you can give him the proper amount of rest, and obviously this was the first game for the team in general in 3 days, so when you give him the proper rest, he can come in and easily give you that kind of performance. That's the type of goaltender he is. Will they keep him beyond this year? I certainly think it's a possibility because I think they know what they've got with him. I think they know how he can work with Carter Hart and still be that veteran presence. And I do think that there's a possibility that he can come for a better price tag than maybe some of the other veteran options out there. I know one that I've heard a lot about, not in any form of speculation that he could come to Philadelphia or anything like that, but just a name that as you start to look at the free agent list, you go, what are the possibilities? Yaroslav Halak is going to be available. And that would be a great veteran to put with a Carter Hart as well. You see how he works with Tuukka Rask right now. And Rask is certainly far from a young player at this point in his career, but that dynamic works really well to have two goalies who can perform like that. Halak would be a great fit in Philadelphia, but you have to wonder, is the price tag going to be too high for the Flyers, who are already cap strapped to begin with? Brian Elliott took a pay cut to stay in Philadelphia going into this season, so would he do the same thing again, or would he take the same amount of money to continue to play here, to continue to have his family around and do all of that? So that's the things that will go into the offseason, but I would certainly think that the Flyers are definitely considering keeping him around. It just comes down to, if there is a better option out there, can it be cost effective for them to move on, or will it just be safe to keep Brian Elliott at a good price tag for all parties involved?
Speaking of price tag, a guy that we just mentioned a little earlier, JVR, obviously took the one puck off the face last night, but 2-goal game. He leads the team in goals this year, and he leads the team in points. And, it's weird because, and maybe this is partly my fault, but if you don't look it up, you don't realize that JVR and Voracek are the same age. They're both 31 years old, but it feels like JVR is like way younger than Voracek just because of, I don't know, maybe it's how we look at him or whatever. Maybe it's because he's a Jersey guy, but what is his future here in Philadelphia? Because I feel like he has a role on this team, and I just feel like I don't know if you want to lose a guy that's going to try to save some money, right? I know he's on a fat contract, but to me, I feel like he actually has a role still on this team.
It depends on who you want to look at specifically, because I see this conversation going on a lot now as everything moves on toward the end of the season. The playoffs aren't really a factor anymore. So you're starting to think about what the offseason is going to bring, and the expansion draft is certainly one of them. I think if people had their pick, they'd probably like to see Jake Voracek's contract go instead of JVR's, honestly, because Voracek does make more money. It is a longer term. Is there a way you can find somebody to take that? And that's not to say that Voracek is the poorest player on this team. From a production standpoint, both guys to me are giving you exactly what you expected at the start of the year. They're giving you roughly the same number of goals they would have given you. They're giving you the point totals. Both of them are on pace, I believe, for about 60 to 65 points in a normal length season. And that's perfectly suitable at this stage. I think the disappointing part of this season has not been a JVR or a Jake Voracek or a Claude Giroux in terms of offensive production. That's been, I think, the weakness of the younger players who, you expect Travis Konechny to be a 25-goal scorer. You expected Joel Farabee to take that step, and he has, but you probably expected more from Oscar Lindblom and Nolan Patrick as well. That hasn't really come from an offensive side. You probably expected more from a lot of those guys. And certainly defensively, this team's struggles have been there throughout. And I do think that when you look at both guys, JVR and Jake Voracek, they're two guys who are not going to give you the best on the defensive side, and you have to account for that. But if they're scoring a lot, and, JVR is that type of goal scorer who goes on streaks at times. He had gone several games without a goal before last night, and he gets two. One the really hard way, and one, using a more conventional way of scoring, I believe is how I put it in the takeaways. But nonetheless, the whole thing with that is just, I don't think there's really one that you favor over the other in terms of which contract goes, but at the same time, I think that Van Riemsdyk at least is giving you, to me, he's giving you everything you could ask for, because he has been better defensively as he's gotten later into his career. I mean, the bar is not set high on this team when it comes to defensive play, but at the same time, he's been better. He's giving you the offensive production. He's a very key player to your power play if you're going to have any success with it. And I do think you need somebody who does naturally play the net front role. We're seeing a power play unit right now where Wade Allison's playing at the net front, and sure, he'll sit there and tell us, oh, he can play that role no problem, but that's not the role that I see him playing, because I think you want him on one of those wings on the face-off circles trying to unleash a good shot, and maybe Van Riemsdyk's there on that same unit to try to get a deflection like he did last night, or to try to get a rebound where he scores so many of his goals. You need to kind of find that good balance, and Van Riemsdyk fits a role on both the power play, and let's put it this way, you're playing him as a top-line guy right now, which is pretty impressive. I mean, they've shuffled those lines around a little bit, but for a long time, you played him as a top-liner, and I don't think anybody thought that that's really the role that he had on this team, and he doesn't have to in the future. If you can get these other young guys to kind of amount to their potential, he's got a spot on this team, I think, but I think he's also going to be one of the easier guys to potentially move, because the contract is going to be shorter in term. The money is a lot, but I think there's, a Seattle could manage that down the road. So that's why as much as he's got a role on this team, I wonder if they would actually move on from him, or if they wouldn't, would be able to hold on to him, I should say, because I think that aside from maybe a Shane Gostisbehere, who again, cost-effective puck-moving defenseman, Probably Van Riemsdyk's the next guy I would think who would go to a team like Seattle and probably be a good fit because he can score a lot. And I don't think that contract is something that locks you in for too long down the line that you can't work with it.
Interesting. The thing with Voracek is, and you and I talked about this a while ago. I think this was like a year ago when we had this conversation previously. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I know the NHL has a history of teams trading garbage for garbage contract wise, like not player wise, but like contract wise. It's like, you give me your trash contract, I'll give you my trash contract. Is that potentially a thing the Flyers can do this offseason, or do you feel like where the NHL is right now, that's not really an option?
No, I think it might be actually one of the only ways they can move on from these contracts is if you find a partner who can do the same thing, kind of, who gives you term, who gives you cap hit, and kind of agrees that it's, kind of what it's going to come down to is agrees that a change of scenery is the right thing to do. So somebody who's been on a team, has that long-term contract, it's not really working out. You give him a fresh start with a new team. The Flyers would give somebody up who would then also get a fresh start. Now, it's also, for a guy like Voracek, it's awfully late in his career to start talking about a fresh start anywhere. But certainly, there's guys who did it for Vegas when they got picked up in the expansion draft and kind of had to shift gears and change their career path a little bit in the sense that they were going to a new team that nobody knew what to expect, and they've kind of turned that into a destination now. And that's the embracing of that opportunity, is you can either embrace the chance to go to someplace new, or you can kind of view it as, rounding out your years, so to speak, and you're kind of locked into that contract. You're locked in with that team. I just don't know if there's really any way. And I do think that there is, to an extent, that this offseason, as much as I think people want a ton of wholesale changes, I do think there's change to be made, and I think there's changes that will happen. But I don't think you're going to see this team overreact to everything. Like, I don't see them overreacting to a guy like Travis Konechny. And believe me, I'm the type of guy who will sit here and tell you I've been disappointed with his season. I think that they have expected more from him. I've expected more from him. But I also think that that's the one guy who, to an extent, you look at that type of player and say, on a younger end, decent contract, the potential and the production he's given you in the past, that might be the type of player you chalk up to the COVID year. It's been weird. When everything kind of shifts back to playing different teams, not just interdivision, not just a 56-game schedule, maybe he snaps out of it and gets better. It's harder to look at the other veteran guys that way, but the veteran guys, to me, have really not been the biggest problem with this team from an offensive production standpoint. It's really about getting your goaltending in line and getting your defense figured out. And you could look at, because I feel like one of the contracts you're kind of alluding to in terms of trading a contract like that for a contract with term and cap hit is kind of one of the partners that people keep talking about with this team. The Flyers and the Flames could match up really well as trade partners, and I guess that would mean that you could look at the potential of a Jake Voracek for Johnny Gaudreau type of trade. Would that work out for both teams? Would remain to be seen if it happened, but it might be that change of scenery thing. Or do you look at it from the Flyers standpoint and go, you know what, Johnny Gaudreau would be a nice piece, would be a goal scorer type, would be a flashy player to add to the lineup, but the real need is that defenseman to play alongside Provorov. So I don't need to give away one of my trade chips that could go into getting a guy or try to add more cap hit back or do something like that when I need a defenseman. So maybe that's the way they take the approach. I think they know what they need the most, and you've got to focus on that first and foremost when it comes to making any move this offseason.
At Kevin_Durso on Twitter for your Flyers and NHL coverage. Flyers versus Rangers tonight. Catch all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. And Kevin will have the full recap of the game over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, don't forget the Open Ice Hits podcast, where he's the co-host with Broads over there. Drops each and every week, and as all guests, Kevin appears on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on. Have a good weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thanks, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we will get back to your thoughts and comments next. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can comment on the show. We talked Eagles and NFL draft to open the show. We will get back to that on the other side. Also, my picks for the weekend, UFC 261 tomorrow. Of course, you can bet on UFC 261 with my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I love also placing wagers on basketball, because you can take new player props and game props and combine them in the same game parlays to score an even bigger payout. It's called a same game parlay bet, and you can only find them on FanDuel Sportsbook. If you haven't tried FanDuel Sportsbook yet, now new users can get a free bet, risk-free, up to $1,000. Just place a bet and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back in site credit if you don't win. Also, new and existing users get up to $25 back in site credit every day if your parlay falls one leg short with same-game parlay insurance. So if you want all these great features that come with FanDuel Sportsbook, use my promo code Hennig when you sign up. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app or go to sportsbook.fanduel.com to get in on all the action. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play in present NJ or PA. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll wrap up the show. Friday edition of Game Night. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN FM.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tonight on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
Murray scores! Tic-tac-toe passing.
The Flyers are in New York to face the Rangers. Tonight, coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
At Ocean First Bank, our first thought is you. We put you first in all we do. Community banking for a century. We treat you like your family. Whatever you need, whatever you dream, let's make it a reality. Ocean First Bank, putting you first.
When it comes to business lending, we offer our customers the personal and professional integrity we demand for our own business. You have a lot of choices when it comes to lending partners, but now, more than ever, it matters where you bank. Your business matters to us.
Whatever you need, whatever you dream, let's make it a reality. Ocean First Bank, putting you first.
Learn more at oceanfirst.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Opportunity Lender.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. UFC 261 on Saturday night. Bet on Rose Namajunas to win back her strawweight championship belt at plus 172 odds. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Wrapping up the show here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Couple things to get to here before we get out of here. Again, Flyers hockey is back on tonight versus the Rangers. Jackson Cates, the Flyers prospect, makes his debut. Here, all the action coming up next on 97.3 ESPN. 7 o'clock, top of the hour, coverage begins. Also, just going to point out as well, tomorrow we got a busy weekend as well. Starts all with the Best of the Sports Bash at 9 a.m. Billy Schwein in the locker room at 10 a.m. We got Brian Baldinger on the show tomorrow. I'll be back on from 12 to 2 p.m. We'll talk some UFC 261 with John Morgan from USA Today's MMA Junkie. Also tomorrow, Sixers basketball at 3:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN. You heard me mention there on my featured bet of the week, Rose Namajunas. So I feel very strongly about this because I know people will say that Rose has an inconsistent history as a fighter, but I think people are overlooking the fact that she also fights well when she's very motivated. And that's why I'm totally in her corner to get at least according to Vegas, would be the upset win. And it's interesting because when she lost her championship, she avenged that loss almost a year later. The problem is the person she was fighting was no longer the champion. And the woman that she lost to is fighting on the same card tomorrow night for the women's flyweight championship. So Rose has only lost to 2 women in the last 6 years. One was to a woman who technically was fighting in a weight class that she was a little bit too big for. Now she moved up in weight class, Jessica Andrade. And then years before that was a split decision loss to Carolina Kowalskiewicz. Easy for me to say. And that was it. Rose has beaten every other woman. So to me, I think she's motivated for this fight. And I think that's why I'm going that direction with the UFC fights tomorrow. Another thing I'm going with is I'm going to go Anthony Smith to get the upset tomorrow over Jimmy Crute. I'm just not impressed with Jimmy. I think Jimmy's a solid, good fighter. I don't have anything against Jimmy as a fighter. But he's on a 2-fight winning streak. His previous loss was by a Peruvian necktie, which is one of the most hard to accomplish submissions in MMA. And before that, he had a small winning streak. I'm sorry, he's not something special. I think Anthony Smith has something to prove. This is a guy who his most recent fight was a win, but previous to that, he had 2 losses. He's tried to stay active during the pandemic, and it was very hard for him because of some personal things going on in his life. Now that things are a little bit different, I think that he wants to prove that he's not a gatekeeper, that he's not a guy to be stepped on. So I got 2 underdogs tomorrow. And, maybe I'm being sentimental. I don't know. But I just feel like it's not the end of the world or the end of the road for these 2 fighters. I do think Kamaru Usman and Valentina Shevchenko will keep their belts. I think that both those fights will be interesting, though. I think Andrade for Shevchenko and Jorge Masvidal for Kamaru Usman present very intriguing challenges for both of those fighters. So UFC 261. We'll get into more deep about it tomorrow with John Morgan from USA Today, MMA Junkie. Of course, Flyers coming up tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. I'll be back on the air tomorrow after Billy Schwein in the locker room. Of course, Billy Schwein in the locker room, 10 a.m. to noon, Saturday and Sunday on 97.3 ESPN. Hope everyone has a great weekend, great evening. Remember, we are just days away from the NFL draft. Get excited, people. We'll talk more Eagles tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN.
It's your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to 10. $10,000. Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
Chair. 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 Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word tomorrow morning at 9:55.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day, every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000.